Actually, Katie, I don't have on the agenda the like full list of names for roll.
Oh no.
Let me see if I can pull it up.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Courtney usually does that for me. Otherwise, I could pull it up too somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
Okay. Christina Burry, Vaughn Jones, or Kirk Will.
Yeah, I'm here.
Amy Moyer.
Here.
John Ring.
Present.
Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally. Selwyn Whiteskunk. I'm not sure if this is still an updated list.
I don't think so.
Brett Walk. Katie McGrath Novak.
Present.
And Commissioner Clyde Church. Does that seem like the correct list? Am I missing anyone?
Yeah, I think so. I guess, Allison, if you're a proxy for Dan, I don't know if he's like officially listed as a member.
Yeah, I don't think he's officially listed as a member, but I am Dan's proxy.
Okay. So we have 4, including me, the chair, which I believe is quorum.
Okay. And did I miss Diana Selby? Should she be on the list?
Hey, I'm not a member. I just usually sit in and answer questions if there's anything with the State Forest Service. So.
Okay, good to know. Well, then I think that's roll.
Cool.
And
Thank you so much.
Quorum is met. Is that what you said?
I believe so, yes.
Great.
Oh, and Commissioner Jody Shattuck McNally is joining us. Did you hit accept on it? There we go. So now we definitely do. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone. I'll start by asking if there's a motion to approve the January 13th meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you so much and welcome.
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that looks great. Cool. So I have a little presentation planned for a little bit later on, but first I wanted to see if there was any follow-up discussion from the full council meeting last week. One thing that stood out to me is the amount of hesitancy around any new recommendations with a fiscal note. And I was thinking like, now is our time to shine as the Leveraging Resources Committee. So I'll just open the floor if anyone had anything that you wanted to add to the meeting or discuss about that.
Katie, one question is just to hear less about the fiscal impact discussion, but more about how to get the guide out in the world most effectively. I'm wondering if I had to jump off at the end of the full council meeting, if you had any recommendations of how to use the full council to leverage that document.
Yeah, so we asked at the end of that presentation for people to put in the chat their ideas for like, who needs to know about this? Where should we share this? And there were a bunch of really good ideas that came through the chat. And unfortunately, Courtney is on vacation and she has the meeting chat on her computer. So we will compile those and I think just send them out via email after she gets back, and then discuss that a little bit more next time. But there were the 2 questions that we had asked. One was where should we get this out? And then the other one was what resources do people need to be able to get it out most effectively? And we got a lot of answers on who should use it and where it should go out, but we didn't get as much around what resources people might need to feel like they can effectively get it out.
Yeah, one idea, and maybe Allison, this is something I more so for you and staff, is last meeting in particular, there were a number of updates and work products that are starting to get ready for public consumption, between the guide, the forest tracker having a soft release, the Rural Grant Navigator program starting to get some legs, and a few others. It stood out to me more so this meeting than others of, wow, I really need to get some emails to my constituents that I represent on the council. And I imagine others were feeling like that. I wonder if it wouldn't be a huge lift for staff to help us with, here's those 5 pieces of content that we can share with our networks. But I just want to offer that as not adding to your already hefty workload, but this one in particular seemed like the council could offer some really great updates to our communities.
Yeah, Kate, Amy, thanks for that. I couldn't agree more that what came out of this meeting was some amazing hard work and some things we really should be sharing around. And I also don't think it's too big of a lift to put something together. What would be the best format? Like a Google slide or Google Slides or a one pager, or what format do you think would be best for everyone?
Yeah, no, happy to hear what others' thoughts are. I think even if it was just like a set of bullets, and then folks, if they want to put it in a slide so they can present, if they have regular presentations, or we can put it in emails, that would be hugely helpful to me to make sure I didn't miss a really important update and give people that extra push to send things out to their networks. But Katie or John or others, please feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, for the Forest Resilience Planning Guide specifically, I know Laura was working on a communications toolkit, and I don't know what all it includes, but I think it was going to include like a slide deck that you could bring to a conference or bring to your collaborative group meetings or whatever, and it will describe the guide and have some notes on what to talk about. And then it might have also, I think it also has text that you can put like in a newsletter or an email to share out with people. So definitely we can send that out, as well as some like tips on how to use it. And then I don't know if the forest tracker has anything like that. I'm sure it will, but I think in this first phase, they were keeping it a little more focused, but we can ask Brett about that if he shows up to this meeting or after. And then Amy, what were the other publications that you were thinking of?
Yeah, the 2020 or 2055 vision, I think is important reminder for folks to know. And I had just jotted the Rural Grant Navigator program, just especially for a lot of the communities on the Western Slope, making sure that folks know that exists. And I'm sure there might be some other updates that other folks would want to pass along. But those were the 4 top ones that I had jotted down of I should get some of the word out.
And I wonder, just quick, about the 2025 vision for forest health. Since we had so much interaction and engagement and minor changes, yes, but we did, change almost every theme that I'm not sure we should. I'm not sure we should be sharing that out yet, because the vision itself wasn't approved, but we could still share what we're doing, right, and where the product that we will have and we're planning on voting on at the April meeting.
Yeah, and I don't know, Allison, do you know if Becca Samolsky is going to put together like a communications kit for that. I don't know if that's in her job description or not, because that could be something that in this committee, maybe we could come up with a few bullets ourselves and make sure that everybody gets that. Because I do think the vision, people are really interested in that and will want to see it. I loved the t-shirt idea. Whoever put that in the chat at the meeting, I was like, how do we make t-shirts happen?
How about you?
Oh, Commissioner. Okay, I think that was an accidental unmute.
Yeah, and just I don't think a communications document is in our scope of work. So if this committee would want to put that together, I think that would be really helpful.
So they told the whole council that they don't put out these reports of what we're working on. I mean, I feel like it should come from them. We can help make one, of course, but I mean, I think it should come from them, right? I mean, we're just a committee on the FHAC. We're not the FHAC. You know what I mean? So I think it holds more weight if it comes from the whole council. Then, I mean, we can help them, but I feel like it for things that have been voted on and approved, like. The vision's not quite there yet, but the other things, I don't know, press release or whatever, DNR, Colorado State Forest Service wants to do. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah, John, I think we can do that too. And yeah, and put something together. A press release, I wouldn't know if that's exactly what we want, but like in that style of, you know, that in that like nice, brief, informative style of saying this is what's going on and give people links and a little bit of context to be able to go and learn more.
Yeah, I think in any case, whether we're the ones developing it or as long as we're just keeping it on the radar, like when Courtney gets back and maybe she and Roberta can help out with that, and I'm happy to help with that too. Let's see. All right, no problem, Commissioner. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead. I made a couple notes just to make sure that we don't lose that stuff. For the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, I can make sure that that toolkit gets sent out for communicating about that. Forest Tracker, we can follow up with Brett, and then the Rural Grant Navigator, maybe who would be the best person to ask about that?
I think we'd want to go to James.
Okay, we'll ask him about that. And then the vision we will wait on until it is complete. But yeah, I think we're coming up with all this awesome stuff. Want to make sure it gets out to as many of the right people as we can and not get it lost. So especially the Forest Resilience Planning Guide, that conversation will not get lost. It's just that we didn't have the chat and I was not thinking to copy it as I went during the meeting. Cool. Anything else related to the full council meeting that we want to follow up on or discuss before we get into our main portion of our meeting? All right, I'm going to share my screen, and that's the wrong screen. How about this screen? Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, and if I do this now, ooh, no, that's not what you want to see. Is this what you want to see?
Yes.
Okay. Just for the record, I cannot see any of you now for some reason. So maybe Roberta, if people raise their hands or something, or if we have a small group, so if people just want to speak up, please feel free to speak up. I just put together this presentation because I thought it would be a helpful visual. So just to recap what we've discussed in our last couple meetings, our sort of goal for this year is to align funding sources with forest planning needs for ease and equity of access. And then we laid out these objectives for how to get there, starting with identifying common challenges with accessing funding, and possible solutions to overcoming them, and then using that information to brainstorm which programs and people this group has connections with, so that we can use those connections to fill in our schedule and come up with our recommendations. So what I did is I went through the focus groups themes report from when we were doing the Forest Resilience Planning Guide focus groups. And that report that Laura sent me had input from 90 participants from 40 unique organizations across Colorado. So I thought this was a good place to start identifying the needs at the different stages of readiness. So I just listed out a few of them here, and then the ones with an asterisk by them are specific funding challenges. So I think there's room to learn more about the specific challenges with specific funding sources, which we'll get to. But this is kind of the planning and implementation needs at each stage. So I'm going to just give a second rather than talking a lot. I'm going to give you guys a second to read through these. Okay. Hopefully you can keep reading if you need to, but those are some of the key needs and capacities that are needed throughout kind of this process. So the ones with asterisks, match requirements can be prohibitive. I guess that one's kind of across the stages, but I just want to make sure that was captured somewhere because I know that's come up a lot. And then these top two bullets under stage 3 really get at the administrative capacity that it takes to apply for grants and manage grants and maintain grants over time, especially if you're relying on capacity funding that's short term. And then reporting challenges came up a lot as an issue that I think is related to funding, where metrics aren't reflecting the process, and then there's different metrics across different scales. I'm wondering if anyone has anything to add to this, or do we feel like this is a pretty good overview of the different capacity and funding related needs? And it might make a little more sense on the next slide, but I'll stop there and see if anyone has any comments or things to add at this point. And again, I can't see you.
I'll just jump in, Katie. This is Amy. One of the things that can be a challenge is trying to think of how to frame this, but the lag of concept to application to contract to funding. I think especially as you get to federal programs, you might be applying for a grant in, let's just hypothetically, January, find out if you receive it in June, August, contract by next March. And so how do you keep momentum going when there's the timelines to implementation can be lengthy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that kind of crosses all the stages as well. I'm going to close out of here and just make a couple notes. I'll put that in stage 4 because there's room. Yeah, and then another one, as you were saying that came to mind is that we hear all the time in the Colorado Forest Collaboratives Network is like reimbursement timelines as well. So I'll note that down here. Cool. So then building on that, okay, I'm going to share this again just in case you're not seeing what you're supposed to see. Okay. So then I went through the funding sources spreadsheet that Amy had shared last time. I think it's a DNR resource that just kind of lists as many forestry and wildfire mitigation funding sources as they could find. So I don't know all of these programs super well. So that's my disclaimer. I'm happy to move these around or change them, but I just based on the short description in that document and based on some of them I do have a little bit more background knowledge on, I sorted them roughly into what stage of readiness each funding source is typically geared toward. And this was not necessarily surprising to me, but it was a little jarring to look at the amount of funding sources that are geared toward implementation, which I put under stage 3, translating strategy into action. And then stages 1 and 2, where you're establishing your community of partners around a shared vision and then translating your vision into a strategy. Those two have a lot less resources available to them. I have descriptions of each of these if needed. So if we want to dive into them a little bit, but again, just curious for feedback. Does anyone have additional information about these that you feel like would put it into a different stage, or any funding sources that are missing that we need to add to this list to have a good overview of what's available? And I focused on state and private funding. I did not include federal funding on here, but I can add that if we think that's something we want to try and tackle. I just thought for this committee, it might be better to focus on state.
Hey, this is Diana. So
Mhm.
I would say, for example, the Furworm Grant Program, it does have a capacity component that could be closer to like stage 2,
Mhm.
where if people want to hire, additional capacity to help develop priorities and that kind of stuff, that's included. So there is a component there. And then I would also say that incentives for local governments may not be worth keeping on the list. It was a one-time funding, and it's not like a program that's going to continue unless for some reason the state decided to add additional funding toward it. But at this point, all projects that were awarded are like working, and when they're done, the program is done as far as we know, and unless the state, like I said, unless there's some legislative action that adds additional funding. But it was like a one-time thing.
Okay, that's very helpful. I was wondering, I hadn't heard of that one, and I was like, I don't know why I haven't heard of that. So that makes sense. So I can move Furworm to be stage 2 and stage 3. I think that makes sense. We probably don't need to focus too much on the ones that are geared toward private landowners, but I did include those on here just to kind of show that those are additional resources that are really focused on stage 3. Are there any big ones that we're missing I was going through this, I couldn't think of big ones that were missing, but it also seemed like, I don't know, it didn't seem like as long of a list as I thought it would be.
I think you said this, Katie, you just started with your most common state funding programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I only did state programs that were in that DNR spreadsheet. That's where I got these from. And I think the last time that was updated was 2023, so it might be a little bit outdated.
This is Diana again. There are some additional programs, or I guess funding. Again, I don't know what you want to list out as far as, sometimes there's just one-time programs that happen in a year or two and then they're done.
Mhm.
But we could provide a more comprehensive list, at least from the Colorado State Forest Service, if that's helpful.
Okay. Yeah, one-time programs probably aren't going to be our focus, but I can follow up and just see if there's any big ones that you think would be useful to add.
And Katie, my understanding from Courtney was that DNR was working to update the spreadsheet already,
Mhm.
so to not duplicate some efforts.
Yeah, Roberta, do you know what the timeline for that is?
Yes,
Or anyone?
that is on me. And it's part of updating the website, which will be honestly in the next 2 weeks. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe if there are any that you add to the list that are very important for us to have, then we can follow up on that and make sure that we don't miss those.
okay, I'll flag that and let you know.
Cool. Awesome. So then I think this is the last slide, is to identify, out of all of these, where do we already have connections on this committee? I went ahead and bolded the ones that I know someone there that I could probably invite to join us on a call, but I wanted to see if anyone else had any connections that you feel like we could bring on if we choose to focus on that funding source.
Katie, I think Restore is an area that a number of us are well connected to.
Okay. I'll put Amy plus others.
And Katie, I'm not necessarily as familiar. I know about the matching awards program, but we can get someone from NFF to come and do a presentation, whether it's Sam Pankratz or someone else from NFF, very easily.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know Sam was connected to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure if Sam's Sam's with NFF as well. I'm sure he should be familiar with it.
Okay. And we determined we don't need the wildfire mitigation incentives, and then the private landowner ones probably are less relevant. What about the water plan grants? Does anyone know much about those?
Yeah. You can put me down, Katie, or looks like Allison can help too.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like for any of these, we have the right connections to get presentations if we so choose.
Perfect. That is what we like to hear. Okay. So I'll stop my share. Hopefully there is not an infinity effect happening. Okay. I think we're back to normal. Okay, cool. So I think at this point, it's mostly like we have a baseline understanding of what some of the key challenges are. We have a baseline understanding of which funding sources are available. We've got connections to them. I think at this point, it's probably a matter of prioritizing which ones we think would have interest in talking to us, and then getting those connections started. Does anyone have a grant program that particularly stands out as an opportunity?
Well, I guess, Katie, it seems like looking at what are the issues that have surfaced in these focus groups and discussions, and which program has been attempting to tackle that we might learn from. Seems like one approach we could do as opposed to just picking a funding program and having them talk. So curious to hear a little bit more what you're thinking here.
Yeah, let me well, so I guess a couple of the big issues. One is stage 3 clearly had like by far the most. So we can start by looking at some of the challenges in stage 3, or we can look at the challenges across the board and see where there are opportunities to have some of those existing funding sources in stage 3 kind of cover more, to address some of those broader challenges. I'm not sure which of those approaches would be better.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking, Katie, of one, for example, if we want to dive a little bit deeper into the matching issue, Restore is a program where people combine their funding issues to take some of the matching components away as a challenge. So that could be an interesting conversation. Or if we're looking at capacity issues of how do you help communities find the capacity to develop these applications or do the administrative burdens or move projects forward, the furworm might be a good example to hear more of how are people taking advantage of the capacity realm of that program, or how might the Rural Navigators program fill in some of those gaps that are already in the works now. So that's just one way we could take it, and a way I was thinking about some of this. But open to others' thoughts too.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the two examples that you just listed are probably the biggest ones that A, showed up in the report, and B, have come up on this call most often. So that, I mean, maybe that's the answer, is just start with those, and we can do a deeper dive. I just listed in that needs by stage slide, I just kind of listed a super brief overview, but we could dive a little bit deeper into those challenges before we have a call that like dives into that. So I think that approach makes sense, to maybe focus on match and capacity as the challenges. And then probably Furworm and Restore are a good place to start as far as specific funding programs with those. I don't know as much about Restore as I do about Furworm. Are there other like kind of challenges that it's known for that we could dive into, or is it mainly that?
Allison, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts. to add there, but it probably would be helpful to the extent we ask somebody from Restore to come and say, hey, we're really wrestling with what we've heard from the ground of it can be really hard to find matching sources, especially if you're a small community or an early collaborative. How does Restore handle that? Or how has, Restore handled capacity constraints? And maybe develop these lists of questions so that folks can come a little bit more prepared with what we're looking at from them, as opposed to just tell us about how your funding is set up.
Yeah, I really like that idea, Amy, especially since this is more of a wildlife focused, right?
Yeah.
And
water.
wildlife and watersheds, although it all comes together, as we all know. I like the idea of giving them some good direction, so that we can get the answers we really are seeking. I don't think I can answer those questions with my information.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So, here's the challenge that we're interested in. We're interested to know, how you're tackling that, what feedback you've had, where you found success. I guess one thing I would be interested to ask them is, where do they know that there are gaps? Like, they know that they're not addressing this the best, but there's some sort of challenge for them to be able to address that. Because like last time we were talking about how, okay, everybody talks about how it's too hard to do match, but then most of the funding sources have really good reasons for why they do match. Some of them being that it's legislatively mandated for them. And so we can ask what some of those barriers are to them, where like they know there's opportunity, but they aren't able to address that in some way. Do you feel like we can, like with the information we have from these focus groups, from our own expertise, do you feel like we have everything we need to know about the challenges and opportunities related to Save Restore, or is there some way that we need to solicit more feedback from people? I know we've talked about like the chicken and the egg, like who do we talk to first? Do we talk to the funder first to understand the source? Do we talk to the fundees first to understand their challenges? So I guess I'm not sure where to begin there.
I have some thoughts, Katie, but I don't want to take up too much space today. So I'll throw it out there with, again, willingness to reach out to folks that weren't able to join today too. But I feel like with the focus groups and the expertise on this committee and the council, we have a really great baseline to start. And one option would be to start making some asks in terms of our next meetings to fill our schedule with a few of these top tier programs that we might want to learn from. And at the same time, if we take matching and capacity, make sort of a discussion guide of, look, these are 2 pinch points we're looking to learn more about and how funding programs address them. And we can come up with almost, a discussion question set between us in the meantime that fleshes out, how do you deal with match? Is it a statutory requirement, or is it really important for your program because it shows community buy-in? Or have you partnered with other entities to eliminate matching issues by X, Y, and Z, or capacity? Do you provide some of the pre-development costs? Or where do projects come when they come to you? How have they completed, those tasks to get to this stage of readiness? So those are just some very early brainstorming, but it seems like we could work on refining these top tier questions that we would want funders to speak to while we start filling in our schedule. But that's just my thoughts. So.
Yeah, definitely open to other thoughts. And maybe we can send out some emails seeking feedback as well. I know we have a bit of a smaller group. Well, maybe that is our next step then. Just go ahead and start coordinating, start filling in blanks in the schedule, and then behind the scenes, figure out what exactly that sort of interview guide might look like, what we want to know, how we want to achieve what we want to achieve, and make those conversations as productive as we can. Does that sound okay to everyone? Cool.
Sounds great to me.
All right, awesome. Let me look at our agenda. I think that is all that we wanted to discuss today. Does anyone want to talk through some of those specifics right now, or do we want to kind of do that behind the scenes if we're not too chatty?
Katie, since I brought it up, I'm happy to work with you to get just some of the discussion guides started, that we could share back with the committee and get some feedback.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That sounds great. I will follow up with you after. Cool. Well, that all sounds good to me. I think I've got good direction, and maybe we can let everyone go a little bit early, and then next month we'll start hearing from people. Any other discussion? And if not, then I would welcome a motion to adjourn a little bit early.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you.
I guess I'll second it.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. And I think everyone who is a member of the committee has either motioned or seconded, so we'll go ahead and call it. Thank you guys, and I will follow up via email. Keep an eye out for those.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Katie.
Bye.